Welcome to Touched by Cancer, a podcast where I connect with people whose lives have been affected by cancer. Touched by Cancer is a phrase that recognises that cancer is an illness that leaves a lasting impact on both those diagnosed and those around them. Our guests will share their personal journeys, discussing the importance of early screening for effective treatment and highlight the support services that are available in Halton. Before we begin, I want to provide you with a gentle heads up. Our discussions cover cancer-related topics including diagnoses, treatment and emotional struggles. I understand that these conversations can be sensitive and I encourage you to prioritise your well-being and join us when you're ready. Hello and welcome. In this episode we are honoured to be joined by the inspiring Karen Millington. Karen will share a powerful story of how her mother's diagnosis led her to prioritise regular screenings. Through early detection, Karen herself was diagnosed, highlighting the importance of proactive measures for effective treatment. Join us as we explore the significance of early screenings and the impact it had on Karen's cancer journey. Without further ado, here's Karen. Hi Karen, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, good.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming in today and having a chat with us. So we'll jump straight in. How has cancer touched you?
Hugely, to be honest. I was only 38. Nobody at 38 really thinks about those things. Family was still quite young, happily married, everything was going fine. Mum had been diagnosed many years earlier. I'd only just had my son, so it was many moons ago, 13 odd years ago. And she'd had breast cancer herself. I wasn't thinking much into it, but she'd encouraged me getting to a bit of an older age to start having screening and putting myself forward through family history. So I went down that route and I quizzed the doctors a few times and eventually I was able to start that process. We had to go back and talk about family tree, who had lost in the family, who had been diagnosed in the family. Took a bit of time, to be honest, because researching a bit back, it's a bit tricky. And then I started the process of having yearly mammograms. Had one, absolutely fine. Told I'd have another one in 3 years' time. Strangely, the year later, a letter came through with a mammogram set for in the November. Went along on my own thinking, well, I'm going to take it. Why wait for 3 years? I might as well take that opportunity and go. They probably got the date wrong and things, but just go ahead and do it. Went along on my own, had the mammogram, felt fine, didn't have any feelings at all with it. Came away, didn't think much more of it. Within 2 weeks, I got a recall back and a same again. Thought to myself, oh, well, they've just not took it correctly. The picture's not clear enough, whatever, and go back again. This time my husband said, oh, I'll come with you and we'll just go together and support each other. They then told me they had seen something and they would be taking a biopsy that day. Came away thinking, still nothing, didn't feel anything particular, didn't feel different in myself, no signs and symptoms really that I knew of. And then it all kind of went from there.
So just to rewind it at the second, it sounds like your mum was, aware of family history, things like that. And had your mum had cancer herself, or was she just aware that it kind of had run in the family? Yeah,
she'd had cancer herself. Probably back in about 2003. She'd had breast cancer herself, and had the all clear and was doing fine. Okay. But that's why she was more protective and making sure I was getting these checks.
I mean, it sounds like, so important. It's very good to have someone, that was, looking out for you, and kind of like, making you aware of it.
Absolutely. At 38, that's something you don't think of. You're doing school runs, you're working, you're keeping on top of a house. You don't think about things like that, so And
I've been finding out a lot more about cancer from being involved in this project and speaking to people like yourselves and people's experience of it. And something that I've heard a lot of, but I don't actually know what it is at all. Is a mammogram? Could you give us just a little bit more information about what a mammogram
Absolutely,
is?
yeah. So a lot of people I've spoke to since do find it quite uncomfortable. I never did.
Yeah.
Literally, you go in, you get gowned up. There's a big piece of machinery.
Yeah.
The nurses are quite kind and nice about this type of thing and understand it's not a nice thing to go through.
Yeah.
And they kind of really, you pop your boob on a slab, cold slab, and they press it down with the machinery to take the best images, really, yeah. Bit of a strange thing, a bit uncomfortable, but it's a definite must.
It works, doesn't it? To take it, obviously,
Absolutely.
from doing it. And so let's go back then to where you were then. So you've gone in for the second time, and they found something.
Yeah, so I then went back and kind of the conversations on the way there with my husband was everything's going to be fine, it's going to come back and it's going to be nothing. Chatting about really if I'm not allowed it again for a few years, how could we go about maybe finding money if you could go private? It just gives you that bit of security from it. But unfortunately, I was taken into a room. Husband was left outside and I was taken into a room and told on my own that I'd had breast cancer.
Is that the normal procedure for it?
I'd hope not, to be honest, because I kind of stopped him straight away and said, "My husband is sat outside in the waiting room. Can I call him and can he be with me while we take all this information in?" So I think that was a bit strange thing to do.
Does sound strange.
And obviously you need that support and somebody that's listening and taking maybe more in than what you are as well. You've just been told a huge thing, so
I can imagine you kind of like you're all over the place when you hear that
mind
type
blown.
of news.
Yeah.
Especially if they're trying to tell you information that's really important for you to know, and
of course
you're trying to take it in, and so definitely having someone else that sounds like it'd be the best thing to do. What happened from there then?
So that was round about mid-November, and I was then sent in for a pre-op round about middle of December, and unfortunately the day before Christmas Eve I was booked in for surgery. Went along. I'd had those discussions with the children, and kind of I'd spoke to work, said to them, I'm having the surgery, it will take place. I worked in a nursery setting at the time. I kind of thought to myself, I'll be back after the Christmas holidays and back to normal, which was completely unreal of me to think that, but that's how I felt.
How was, obviously, your family and work with you at this time? Were they supportive?
Yes. Obviously, that first of being told, Lee and I just kind of hugged and cuddled and cried together on the way home. The hard bit was then going to speak to my mum. She knew I was going back and knew I was having a check again and things. So I rang her to make sure she was home, and went in, and I think she knew straight away by my face. Something I'll always remember and it'll always stick with me is that she said, she wished it was her and not me, and she wished she could take that away. And obviously that was never going to be the case.
With regards to the operation, you were saying that you thought that you might be back, looking back, but you're saying very unrealistically, but was the kind of idea at the time of your treatment that it would be a surgery and that would be everything, or is that something you'd done in your head? The pathways are just unknown really at that stage. That was just something I was thinking, just like a normal, I don't know, going and having your tonsils out or something like that. I was literally just saying goodbye to the children, saying goodbye to the parents, and saying, have a lovely Christmas, see you in the new year type of thing. Made plans to do things in the new year. Managed to get out for Christmas dinner, which was something I really wanted to do. Strangely enough, I like to try and
side of it is, do my hair and makeup, and I never cottoned on that I was going out for Christmas dinner 2 days later and wouldn't be able to lift my arm up and even do my hair.
Yeah.
So, but I did want to get there and be with the family that day. That was really important, and to make Christmas Day as special as normal for the children as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So then what happened after that? What was the kind of recovery?
Okay. So unfortunately, I went back. With it being over the Christmas and New Year period, they usually hope to get results back to you within the 2 weeks. So come the 9th of January, I was thinking the results will be on the way. I'll be finding this information out. And unfortunately, I got the phone call to say that they were delayed with the Christmas period. So I had to wait another week for that. So it was kind of just that waiting around. That was the hard bit, the not knowing what was next, what was going to happen next. So when I went back, I was told that unfortunately they hadn't got everything. So they class it as the margins around the actual cancer, and they hadn't got enough of the margins away, so the cancer was still there. From then, it's kind of back into to meetings with them. They had to discuss what the best options for me were.
Yeah.
Obviously, the possibility of radiotherapy, would that be safe enough to do? Would that get everything? Possibility of chemo, and that's the route they decided to go down.
With this, with when they're looking at different options and things like that, how much kind of control or choice do you have in the matter? Or how much is it kind of like round the kind of like the doctors kind of going, no, we do know this is the route that you should definitely take, or is it kind of like, we think that this is an option for you, or this is an option for you, and you kind of get a choice in it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think because the margins weren't clear, it was a definite that's what was needed. So they explained that really thoroughly to me, and that takes time to do. So kind of months and months were going, a few months were going by, and then obviously in the back of your mind, so if it's still there, is it growing? Are things changing? Is it progressing? In what way? And that was a bit of a tough time between that end of January to the March.
I can imagine your mental health at the time. How were you coping with it? Just the kind of the weight of everything that was going on.
I kind of try and hold things together. I did start kind of looking at different ways in which I could keep myself healthy, keep eating correct foods, things like that, and just spending as much time with the family and doing things and being open with them. When I got told that I would be going to start chemotherapy, it's amazing how much children take in and what they know. I sat the boys down and explained to them. My youngest at the time was in year 6 in junior school. And I explained that they were just going to be putting something into me every couple of weeks, and it'd be getting rid of the bad stuff and helping me with the good stuff. And he straight away came out with it and said, "Is that what's called chemotherapy?" And that made me realise that, it's not, you can't hide these things. One thing I definitely realised in that time was when you're touched by cancer, you see it everywhere. It's on every advert, any song, any radio station. It's literally there, and it's because your mind's on it, you focus and see it so much more.
Yeah, I can imagine that happens with lots of things, doesn't it? Where suddenly once you're becoming aware of it, then suddenly you see it everywhere and things like that. And so I can imagine, that it's almost like inescapable. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
you turn on the radio, you see someone that you put on TV, it's on a TV show. I can really kind of put my head in that space where it's you're surrounded by it, or feels like you are surrounded by it during that time. How did you young people you're talking about them, then your children cope with it themselves? We talk about being touched by cancer, and it's obviously massively for yourself and anyone that gets diagnosed with cancer, but we know that it affects not just them, but partners, family members, close friends, and things like that. Were your children kind of similar to you in the kind of that you're getting a steady head on it, or how were they affected during this time?
One of the things I did kind of straight away was I did open up to one of the youngest class friends and his parent, because she was also in the situation.
Yeah.
So I did open up to her and got advice from her as well, and we talked, and kind of she offered for her son to be a buddy to my youngest and ask those questions if needed,
really nice.
which was fantastic, because obviously they're still at a young age, you know, 10, whatever. I also got in touch with the schools, made sure they were aware of the situation. The youngest had a bit like a mentor that looked after him, so they'd have sessions with him, and they'd keep in contact with him on a weekly basis, daily basis, whatever. He could have time out from the classroom if he wanted to go and have those difficult talks. They made lots of nice things together, so he could have those conversations that he possibly would feel were tricky to have with his mum and dad, and it was better to open up with somebody else. The eldest was a little bit different. Still loving and adorable as always, but he didn't get really great access through schooling, which was a difficult time, and we did have to fight a little bit with that, which you're not really in that good frame of mind to be wanting to do that, but I didn't want him to be let down. I wanted him to get the support he needed.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's all these types of things that you would never think about, if you get a diagnosis and things like that.
Absolutely.
Like battles with schools and things like that. And I'm, again, not knowing it, but I guess it probably is down school by school in terms of how they react and the support they put in and things like that.
Yeah. He didn't get much support, even though I'd spoken to them, because he seemed to be doing okay, didn't seem to be struggling, didn't seem to be getting upset, annoyed, angry. He was kind of like just doing okay. But I wanted them to be aware that there could be an outburst, there could be something that triggers him one day, a conversation, a friend, a teacher, something could trigger that.
Definitely, yeah. There's a lot going on below the surface, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
With when it was said, you're going down the chemotherapy route. When you start chemotherapy, do they say this is how long it's going to last for, this is how long it's going to be, or is it a little bit more like we're going to start it and then figure it out as it goes?
They did have a plan.
Yeah.
I was going to go every 3 weeks and have two types, sorry. The first type for the first three sessions, and then change to on the fourth session up to the sixth session to a different one.
Okay.
They were really open and said that's what they were hoping to do, but it just depended how my body went along with it and how it worked. Unfortunately, the day that I started my chemotherapy, my mum had been diagnosed for a second time. And when I went in for my first day of chemo, she went in and had a mastectomy that day. So that was really tough on, surrounding families as well, because it was just hard to go through that and watch that happen. And at the end of it, you kind of in your mind think, well, she prayed that she wished it was her and not me, and eventually it was both of us together, which is really hard.
Yeah, very hard.
Yeah.
So with chemotherapy, I mean, I'm so new to this subject that I know very little. I'll be honest with you, the main thing I think about when I hear chemotherapy is people losing their hair.
Yeah.
And you mentioned then about you being somebody that really liked your makeup and doing your hair and things like that. How were you, was this something that concerned you or worried you, or were you like, actually, I don't care about that whatsoever, I just want to get better? Or how did that side of things affect you?
The first chemo I went to, I chose to have the cold cap. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No.
So the cold cap is where they hope that it will freeze the follicles of your hair, so you don't have to lose your hair, hopefully. I went in really positive about it. We had to drive to Clatterbridge for it, because at the time that was the closest one that did that treatment. I sat there, they put it on your head. It's a big helmet type thing. Unfortunately, I couldn't cope with it at all. I did go into very much quiver and wreck. It makes your treatment last longer because you're in there and it's got to freeze all your head first of all before then they can start giving you the actual chemotherapy. So it's about 40 minutes of waiting while it freezes it all, and for me the pain wasn't bearable. A lady sat opposite me and she was on her third time of having it, and she had a cup of coffee going through it, read a magazine, chatted to her husband, went on a phone, things like that. But for me, I was a quivering wreck. I couldn't do it.
I think something that we brought up with everyone that we spoke to about this is like how everyone responds to and reacts to things differently, and how it's, you can go into stuff thinking this is how I'm going to be, this is how I'm going to react, this is how I feel like I am myself, but until you actually are there and doing it, you just don't know, do you? Especially something like that where you'll have never experienced or done anything like that before.
That's right.
So it must have been, I guess, scary as well at that point if you're if it's right at the beginning of it, and you're kind of like, I can't handle this. So what was the process then was it, so you stopped with the freezing element and then just did the chemo?
You had to kind of wait till it defrosted on your head, and then the chemotherapy, then I could just have that as normal, knowing that I would be having hair loss with that type of chemo.
And how was the actual chemotherapy treatment itself? Was that a lot less painful?
Fine. Sitting there, they pop you on, you have a flush system that goes through you first of all. They gave me some steroids, so I had a little bit of a snooze, and just then, you're pumped with this magic kind of to hope I'll help you along the way. I know just going home then, I just kind of knew I'd just get myself to bed and see what happened over the next couple of days. I didn't have any plans, I didn't have any knowledge of what to do or how I was going to be. One of the hard bits was because I'd had the chemo, and obviously your immune system is less. I wasn't able to go and see Mum in hospital. They said to stay clear from her. So I had 7 days where I couldn't go and see her. But probably not being selfish, it probably gave me the time where, because I was poorly, I needed to focus on me as well. So it was just telephone only, really, with her.
I was going to say, it was probably way before Zoom and FaceTime and things like that. So it's mad, actually, how technology has enhanced that type of thing as well, isn't it? But maybe you're right. Maybe that time to yourself to be able to just concentrate on recovering was a positive thing. How did things progress from there then? Was it became, I know you said 4 weeks, was it? And then
three weeks, every 3 weeks, So I kind of got to learn that for 1 week I would do nothing. I'd be maybe in bed most days, come down for a little bit of time, and then spend some time with the family, and then I'd be well for 2 weeks. My favourite saying along the time after learning over the couple of times was that I would slap the makeup back on and go, boys, I'm home again, Mum's back. And if I'm ever unwell, that's the first thing that goes. If I'm well, that's the first thing that gets put on. So they knew I'd be there then.
I think that's it as well. I think when we've been speaking to other people, you can have this image of like, you look back and you assume that it's all going to be this really terrible time, what they were saying, but there was such good times as well, during it as well. And so just like you were saying then, when you're well, you get the makeup back on, you can have these, still have good family times, together and stuff like that. And it not necessarily all being this really down, really, which probably was in general, but, but there are still these moments and these opportunities, where it can bring families, closer together.
It came to my second lot of chemo then, and my hair was starting to fall out in clumps. I knew that was going to happen. Kind of. I remember walking one day, and it was just flying out like leaves fall off trees type of thing. I rang a hairdresser, and I'd known her for years, and just asked her, could she help me along and shave it off. She cried the whole way through doing it, and I kept holding her hand and saying, I'll be all right, I'll be okay. I'd ordered a wig by then. I'd been to the wig shop with mum and dad. They'd both come with me. I'd chosen a lovely wig that I felt was fantastic, which is great now because they've come on so much, which is brilliant. And some people actually didn't realise that I was wearing a wig sometimes. I watched lots of YouTube and got lots of scarves and learned how to make different bandana type styles on hot days. And on cold nights, I would wear my son's woolly Everton hat because my head would get cold in bed at bedtime. But yeah, I learnt it.
With the wig, did you go for a different style, or did you try and replicate what you had?
People that know me, I've always had different types of hairstyles throughout the year, many different types, black, red, blonde, brown, whatever, shaved, unshaved, spiky, all sorts. And I went from, I'm trying to think what my hair looked like at the time. It was probably, shoulder length, dark brown. I went to a very much blonde bob with a full fringe and absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
That wig has been used on stage with my niece when she's done dance shows. I passed it on to her to use. But I felt brilliant wearing it, to be honest, which meant a big deal to me.
And again, not knowing much about it, but you were saying that they've come on leaps and bounds since then. So what's kind of been the revolution? Has it just got slowly better over time?
I think so, yeah. And the lady the shop that I went to, she actually suffered with alopecia herself many years earlier and realised that she was struggling to get nice, fashionable, and she decided to open her own business. And that's who I got told to go and, experience my time with her. She was fantastic. If anything you'd ordered in, anything that just she wanted a little bit of more off the fringe or whatnot, she had a hairdresser on site that would do that, so kind of a bit like a hairdressing style, where you could go and have that treatment even though it wasn't your hair. But she made me feel really comfortable and really relaxed, which was great because she'd also, not through chemo, but she was also had those experiences herself.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds so different to an experience of going on Amazon, for example, Jill, and being able to speak to somebody that's got that experience, knows what's potentially going to work or not work, and be able to do it. So it sounds like you found a really positive person there and service for it.
I remember shopping in Widnes, and a lady on the till in boots came out and said to me, "Oh my goodness, can I just ask you what hair shampoo and conditioner you're wearing? You're using the Shining, it's gorgeous." And they kind of bent forward and said, "It's a wig." And it just brought up a bit of a chuckle then, but it helped me along the way to feel comfortable.
While we're talking about that support service, I guess you could call it with regards to the wig, were there any other support services that you were using during the chemotherapy?
Yeah, definitely. I reached out to Sam's Diamonds, who I mentioned before with my son's friend. His mum was in the Diamonds group, and I knew within the school environment a few of them had spoke about it, so I reached out to Sam, who was amazing. She was with me through it all, to be honest. And I also reached out to this centre, the Widnes and Runcorn Cancer Support, and just knocked on the door one day and just spoke to Nick, and it all went from there, really. Sam, I got lots of different things from Sam's Diamonds compared to here. They didn't really cross over in many ways. Sam's Diamonds gave me boost. They gave me energy to keep fighting, keep feeling young, keep feeling energetic. Here I accessed counselling and therapies here, so it was completely different what I got from both sides, but I wanted to just access as much support as I possibly could.
That's great. Well, for our listeners, you may have already listened to them, but we have got a podcast with both Nicola and Sam from Sam's Diamonds, so if you've not heard them yet, keep an eye out for them, as you'll be able to find out a lot more about those services as well throughout them podcasts. So coming back to your chemo, you said how did it progress along once after you'd started to lose your hair?
Yeah, so I had 3 more of the same one, and like I say, every 3 weeks, be down for a week or so, and then I'd get back up again, and could have 2 weeks of doing normal things, really. The 4th one then, I was changing to a new one. Unfortunately, it just targeted me way too much, whether it was the strength, whether it was my body just not coping. I'd always been told, always been given a chemotherapy card. If anything temperature-wise went up, if I wasn't feeling, you'd go straight to that card, ring that number, and you'd have that support straight away and that guidance from a medical team. I kind of hit rock bottom, temperature was sky high, and I was told to get straight into A&E really and get seen straight away. I was hospitalised for 4 days. And in the back of my mind, all I could think of was, please don't give me that one again. Please don't give me that one again. I did hit rock bottom, I will be honest. I cried a lot. I was really, really struggling, and I felt like I was ready to give in. My husband was getting nowhere with me. He was trying his best. Fight for your children. You still got young kids, things like that. But it was very, very hard. That's when he emailed Sam's Diamonds, and he said, Karen's really hard here. She's really struggling. Can you come and just give me support? And within 2 hours, Sam was there in the hospital next to me, holding my hand, helping me have injections. Cried together, laughed together, but also she gave me the kick up the backside to fight it. I did. I was ready. I'd had enough. I was tired. I was done in. And I was feeling that I was ready to go.
I can imagine that must be really strange probably for you as well at that time. You're very come across at least as a very strong person. You're very kind of got your head on straight, know what you want to do. And I'm probably imagining a very different situation to you possibly found yourself in before, and so I think it's a little bit like we were saying earlier, where there's no right or wrong responses to these types of things, and if you are feeling like that, there's probably a very good reason for it, in terms of your body's being asked to go through a lot mentally. There's a lot going on, and there is only so much you can take before you have rock bottom, or even potentially a breakdown, or whatever, and just to kind of, I guess, try and normalize these things a little bit. It's an awful lot that you're asking yourself and the body to go through and stuff, and so these type of reactions are perfectly normal. It's brilliant to hear of the support services like Sam and Sam's Diamonds, there. And as I mentioned, we've done an interview with Sam, and it's not the first time that she's said she's had to have tough love with people, to really kind of like snap people out of it, and be ready to ready to go and get them going again and stuff. And so it sounds like a very normal response what you've had there, or at least from my point of view, a very normal response to something that must have been like incredibly difficult at the time. You mentioned then that you were really worried about them wanting to do that chemo again, and if I'm right, your original plan was that you would have one more of those. Is that right?
Two. I'd have 3 in total.
3 more of them.
Yeah.
Or 3 in total. Sorry, so 2 more of them.
Yeah.
And so, what happened after that then?
Okay, so my oncologist team got to talking, and they decided that it was too much for me to go through, and that they would put me on a lighter dosage, but would be weekly instead.
Right.
This meaning really, hopefully, that it wouldn't target too much of my body, in the way that I would recuperate a lot faster. But that would be every week going to the hospital and having the chemo instead. So it worked out on a Monday I would go and have bloods, and on a Tuesday I would have 8 lots of chemo over the 8-week cycle, every Tuesday. I kind of then took it that Wednesdays and Thursdays were hopefully going to be just poorly days, and then I'd be up again ready for a weekend. With the family. Yes, yeah.
Did it work out like that? Was that?
It did. They were wonderful at Halton Hospital. That's where I went for it again, and they were wonderful. They were brilliant. the difficult time was that I think I had probably about 2 of those, and then my mum was told then after a mastectomy that she would be having chemotherapy as well. The chemotherapy for breast cancer is usually on that day, the same day. So we kind of discussed it, and I'd been going for a couple of weeks with my husband by my side and that support there. So we kind of discussed, was there a possibility that she could go at a different time? I didn't think that I could be put in that situation, also knowing my mum was sat in the same room having chemo at the same time as me. So I would kind of go for the early slot and she would have an afternoon slot. Eventually, within a couple of weeks really, we kind of chatted and said, this is silly, why can't we do it together and support each other instead of fighting against it, kind of thing. So yeah, we would go together. Mum and Dad would go to sit with her and my husband would go with me. We would have our little snoozes whilst it kicked in, and they would go off and have a piece of toast and a cup of tea and have a chat with each other. So it gave them time as gents to speak to each other as well, which kind of brought them close as well, which was nice. And then week in, week out, that's what we would do.
And how did it progress from there then? What was the next steps?
From then, they'd discussed that if the chemo would work, we would I'd still have to have surgery again.
Okay.
So that continued really, with the changing of the chemotherapy, that continued really till beginning of August time. And I was then booked in for another pre-op and another lot of surgery in the September.
So was the surgery that you were going for post-chemo going to be the same essentially another attempt to get
more of the margins,
more of the margins around it?
So I was lucky they went in the same spot. You can hardly see any scarring really. They literally opened up the same area, went in and got the correct measurements around it to take it all out, which was good.
And then obviously recovering from surgery, but at that point then were you done with chemotherapy, or did you have to do any more afterwards or anything like that?
After the surgery, they said that no, I wouldn't be needed any more chemotherapy because they got the margins and got it out. But they advised that I would then go and have 3 weeks of radiotherapy once a day, Monday to Friday for 3 weeks, to kind of like just burn out the area, and make it safer for myself.
I'm sure there's a massive difference, but again, for an outsider, what's the difference between chemotherapy and radiotherapy?
So kind of chemotherapy targets the area, hopefully shrinks the tumours, and kind of keeps them in one place. Radiotherapy is kind of just the mopping up of the situation. Kind of just burning off all that, that area around it.
Yeah. Is it an easier or a harder treatment to have when you're having it?
I'd say easier. It's possibly tiring because I went to Aintree for mine, so it was day in, day out going for it. At the time, I think there was 2 or 3 radiotherapy areas, and if there was a bit of a delay, things like that, or one of the machines wasn't working to plan, you could be a little bit longer in that situation. Luckily enough, we could my husband drove me there, and we went, and you'd be there just for maybe an hour or 2, but because it was daily, it just took its toll a little bit, where it was a bit tiring with that travelling. Before the radiotherapy starts, you get 2 tattoos, which is a really strange feeling. So you get one just in between the chest and one underneath the armpit, and that's the lining up then of where they then would put you on the radiotherapy bed, and that's where the lasers line up then to know the targeting the correct area. So I live with those little spots of tattoos forever.
I did not know that. And so at this point, were you obviously, well, not obviously, I guess. Sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I guess, how were you feeling hopeful then at this point? Or I guess like it's a bit of a strange one, isn't it? Where you've gone through chemotherapy, you've gone through the surgery, you're still having radiotherapy, but I'm guessing that that all signs are pointing to a positive conclusion. Like at this time, were you mentally feeling positive about it, or were you still very worried, or where were you at that point?
I think I felt very strong then.
Yeah.
I started to make plans for the future, what I wanted to do. My radiotherapy started about second week in the November. I was turning 40 in the November, and I wanted a huge celebration, I will be honest. I also asked Lee, my husband, if we could renew our wedding vows. So into 1 week into radiotherapy, I was getting we were getting that organised, and that was going to be a big celebration. So bringing back nice memories of our wedding day, and following through what songs we chose on that day, what flowers we had on that day. And we went to church, renewed our vows, and threw a big party with lots of lovely family and friends, which was fantastic to kind of be coming to the end of it. I hadn't fully finished because I was still going through the radio, but it was lovely to have that focus and everybody around me.
That sounds amazing. And again, it's just reiterating that everyone's different, aren't they, with these? It's fantastic that you, at that point, after speaking about, hitting the rock bottom, like not that long previously, when you were in hospital, to be kind of like really positive, not at the end of it yet, but really positive, really planning, this is what I'm going to be doing, this is what I want to look forward to. It's like, sounds like a really fun time, in terms of doing that. And so you finished the radiotherapy. And then was that the all kind of clear then after your final course of radiotherapy?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, finished the radiotherapy and went back in, had an appointment, and they did checks and things, and everything had cleared, everything had gone.
How did that day feel?
Oh gosh, amazing. Yeah, amazing. Kind of just like when you see the adverts, and you kind of just, oof, wow, that has been a tough time, but we got there, we did it. So fantastic. And like I said, you start planning, your mind changes, you start planning, and you start thinking about what's ahead of you and what things you can do and what exciting times are going to come ahead.
So after that now, then do you still have to go for regular screenings just to make sure that there's been nothing's come back and things like that then?
Yes. So I have I'm on long-term for 7 years on medication, tablet form, but I also have a monthly injection into my tummy. That is because of me being so young and having the diagnosis. Because of me going through menopause and everything earlier on, it just suppresses. So I have that monthly, and I have yearly mammograms. I don't know how long they will continue, yearly mammograms, but I will keep going for them, absolutely, most definitely.
One of the main reasons that we're doing this podcast is we want to raise awareness and hopefully get more people to go for early screenings. How important would you say that early screenings were for you?
Oh gosh, well, if I hadn't gone down the family history, who knows where I would have been, because I wouldn't have had those opportunities to be able to. It was literally because I could show evidence. If Mum hadn't have pushed me forward for that, if I hadn't been quite vocal going to the doctors, I wouldn't have been at the age where I could have those screenings. If that letter had come and it had said in 2 years' time, would I have ever felt that, and would it have ever been that 2 years later would have been too late for me? So hugely important. I would definitely say if you have that chance to be able to go and get screened, if you're at that age, if you've got any worries, concerns, any changes, just be really vocal about it. And if you've got that in you to fight your case and argue the case that you want something, then and you want that check, then go for it, definitely.
Fantastic. And how are you in the family now?
Good, yeah. All good, thank you. Yes, yeah. Great, yeah. Children aren't children anymore, but all good, which is lovely, yeah.
Fantastic. And so, just to come back a little bit, your mum was going through chemotherapy at the same time as you then. How did your mum's journey progress after that?
She's doing good, yes. She continued with the chemotherapy as well. And she has yearly checkups again. She has yearly mammograms with them, and she got really good support with her breast care nurse from Macmillan as well. So that was great that she had that support network, and if she ever has any worries, then she can give them a call, and they've been fab with her. She did get told last year that she wasn't entitled to any more yearly checkups and would be going on to a 3-year checkup. Luckily enough, she decided to then look down the route of, well, I really would like it. It just gives me more support, more comfort in knowing that I've had that full mammogram. And she did inquire about private. We have discussed that in the past about, would you find the money if that was the case? Would you do that just to give you that reassurance? And it was good to hear that, yes, you can go private, and it isn't for ourselves. I don't feel it is too much of an amount. She did inquire again and again, and luckily enough, there was a breast screening going on in one of the local hospitals, and she literally just went along and said, this is where I'm up to, this is where when I finished. I've been told I'm going on to 3 yearly. I'm really uncomfortable, and I am feeling really anxious about it. And the nurse was fantastic and got her in the next day just to give her that comfort and that support of having a yearly one again.
That's brilliant. I mean, it sounds like your mum has been like really useful throughout it, from the very beginning, talking to you about it, and, clearly on it for her own health as well, making sure that she's keeping up with that and things like that. And so it's interesting as well, because we not really spoke about going private, and things like that, but obviously is a potential option, for people, if they've got those means to be able to do so and be able to keep themselves that peace of mind as well and things like that. And so I guess it's always worth finding out and evaluating all your options that are available to you, as it may be something that you want to take advantage of or use from. So that's interesting to hear around that side of things as well. If you could go back to the start of your cancer journey and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh gosh, that's really tricky. Check yourself is one of them. It's really hard, and I say that now as in now I've had surgery, it's really hard to feel lumps and bumps in the left-hand side, but it is really important to just check yourself. And sometimes it's just so easy to put that to the back of your mind. It literally takes a few minutes. It can be when you're in the shower, when you're waiting for your tea to cook, whatever. But if you don't have that in your mind of checking, then household jobs come along, your work things come along, everything else takes over, and that gets put to the back of your mind. So it's just such a simple thing to do. So just do it. And
do you have any advice for listeners out there that are potentially starting on their journey?
Be open. Try and take advice. Be open. Look around for support. Talk to people. Try not to let it build up. And make sure you get the correct support through the medical team as well. Make sure you get that backup from them. Mine, I will be honest, hasn't always been great. The correspondence between us hasn't always been great. But I feel that was okay for me, but that might not be the same for somebody else. So keep those channels open and keep reaching out if you need any help.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for all your time today. It's been really nice to speak to you and find out a little bit more about your journey, and how it impacts on yourself and your family and everyone else around you. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Touched by Cancer. If anything you've heard raises concerns about symptoms, treatment, or screening, please consult your GP for advice. Early detection plays a crucial role in the effective treatment. If you're interested in exploring services mentioned during these podcasts, we encourage you to click on the link in the description to visit their website and find out more about the amazing services they offer. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to Touched by Cancer. Take care, stay strong, and remember, you're not alone in this journey.